Couple seconds.
There's all our background stuff.
Virginia is not here.
Let's say tomorrow. Let's call this meeting to order. You're online there, sir?
I think we're online, sir. Go ahead.
All right. Call the meeting to order. Virginia is not here. Need an approval of the agenda for the meeting. Jeff, second by Tom. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of finance minutes. You guys got everybody got a copy of the minutes we had at the last meeting. Any additions, corrections? If none, I need approval of the minutes, please. Seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. All right. Public comment, anybody? No, you guys are on later, okay. Get on there.
Well, I'll pass it on to the very competent finance director.
All right.
Okay, we'll make this quick. We got to figure it out. So finance for the month. First of all, anybody who read the vendor payments, don't be shocked. July is a month where you do settlements, so it's a little higher than normal, 8.6 million, 7 million-ish of that is settlements going out to other municipalities for the tax collections, as well as 780,000 was the second and final loan disbursement. So that dollar amount is all in the 1 month, which is unusual for that report. Contingency balance, we'll need this later. We're at 51,686. Later on, so we'll remember that number. Sales tax for the month of July, which we received in August, we got another 122,600. Year to date, we're at 815,000. At this pace, it's conceivable we could hit 1.4 million this year. There's some ups and downs to come, but that's where we are through the month of July. As far as individual departments, we've got a few that are ahead of their revenue projections, which at this point in the year, I don't usually focus on revenue unless it's a problem. It's good to see that some are ahead. It's child support, one more. Registered deeds, for various reasons, are well above where they ought to be considered. That we're happy through the year, a little happy through the year. That's good to see. Corner is still above budget. Unless something changes, we're going to have to revisit that in October, and they will likely need some of that contingency balance. Yes, how much now? It's kind of hard to say. We're a little early in the year. I don't expect it to be a big number. The coroner's office total budget is only 36,000. Being above budget could be, it's 10,000. It's hard to tell now. That could stop suddenly. It could get worse. It's unknown at this point.
That's just driven by aging population.
Not necessarily aging population. He also has to deal with suicides and other events. When the sheriff's office is busier, so does he.
How people die.
How they die, and if he needs to have the coroner present as opposed to just somebody dying. It's what happened, not necessarily how many. August first discovered the ARPA. Let's see, the federal this year's coronavirus. There's a process. We got our money in May, I think it was. That's coming up later too. There's an interim report due a couple days ago, and all we had to do there is confirm yes, the data we sent them was okay. At the time I filled it out, I had to put in our estimate of lost revenue. And all I had to do is say, as far as how is it being used, is to be determined. So it's a report. There's going to be one of those each quarter now for the remainder of the time period, which goes out to 2024. So that's the status of that for now. Budget is progressing. We've got departments in. Now it's a matter of piecing it together. So that's everything I have, unless your questions.
questions?
Okay.
Medical.
Well, in some ways, we'll probably revisit this in a few minutes. As you can tell, for 2020, we're at 100, for medical, we're at 103.59, so we're 3.59 year-to-date above what we collect in claims. So that puts us in the hole about, at least right now, about 161,000. For medical, we are at 93%. So we're about almost 7% under what we usually get from a claim standpoint. So that's good. And then for large claims, as you can see what we have there, we have our baker's dozen. We have a few new additions to the list. But what you can do is if you see the first top 6, those are some sizable ones. Remember, our stop loss is 55,000 or over. We have at least 2 people have gone over the $100,000 mark. But again, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. If there's any questions specifically on some of this, I can tell you that most of these are cancers, arthritis, MS, accidents, things like that. So it's not lifestyle type of things. So, if not, I'll then go to, I'm sorry, I'll quick pause for 3 seconds to see if there's questions. All right, I'll move on to overtime, Mr. Chair. If you're seeing what we have there, it's pro forma. Yes, we'll probably be a little high in the sheriff one, but we'll see how that all goes. Highway, everything else, nothing really jumps out as too egregious. This is what I'm saying. If there's any questions on OT, we can talk OT.
Sure. Yes, I guess I'll just add a couple of things. We talked about overtime being a tad high, the sheriff's department. To Paul's concern or question about deaths, that's all kind of related. We did have some critical incidents in regards to overdoses that creates a substantial investigation that of course draws time. Just last week, we had a couple of substantial calls, but some of that is reimbursable. We've got some safety grants that actually results in overtime, but then it's reimbursable on the revenue side. So that's also impacted there. We have one on the control side of FMLA, so that drives it up a bit as well. But nothing, again, mostly incident based or related to grants, but nothing as far as tracking that I'd be concerned about through the rest of the year, unless the calls continue.
Now we can go to number 7, Mr. Chair, if you'd like.
Yes, please.
So I'll try to make a hash of the summary, and if I screw it up or there are more questions, Mr. Myers is here to answer those questions. At the fairgrounds, for those of you that have visited, we have, is it roughly 4 to 5 food stands that are there. Some have been there for a long time, and the electrical system that is feeding them is old and needs to be updated. And part of the reason why is because if you read in there, there's the potential of safety hazards, whether it's fire, electric, whichever. And so we're going to update that now as opposed to wait till something happens. We look at that costing about $18,000. We will charge each of the stands a portion of that cost and get this thing done. So, but to do that, we need to get that either from the fairgrounds fund balance or from contingency fund. So we're asking that transfer be approved.
And the fairgrounds fund balance, 33,693, and that was set up before I got here, 2008-ish or so. I saw that one. And the purpose of that was to take unused maintenance money that from one year and it wasn't used, it carried forward to other years for bigger things like this. So I would suggest that's where this comes from, because that's what it's there for.
Do the organizations that we're looking at charging the subsidy, are they aware of that?
Want me to answer that?
Yeah, go
What
ahead.
we're looking at doing is, we're gonna upgrade the service to their building. They would need to update electrical in their building to connect to that service. So whatever that charge would be, it's an estimate. I've talked to one of the food stands, the other 2, we're kind of waiting to see what happens here before we contact them, but they're gonna have to update their end of things.
So is it like, I mean, Matt, you work that a lot. Is it like all the outlets 20 amp for Nesco's? What are we talking?
Right, no,
So-
everything internally, like I'll just use Toy Road because I've been
Yeah.
involved for so long. That inside, that's all been updated. It's got brand new boxes, breakers, wiring. But the fail point is where it comes out of the building to the connector to what we call the lateral, right? And almost every year it basically explodes. This year was a good example. It was 4 PM on a Friday. We're all, bang busters going crazy. Everything goes dead. There's sparks flying. That's happened like.
It's not just that stand, the
Right.
3 stands are out.
Yeah. So it's that connecting point. So they're talking about putting a box basically, I think behind Farm Bureau, that would be the master box. We would all then tap into that.
Okay,
So that would eliminate that fail point that we've been dealing with for years now.
And what, and correct, go ahead, Dave.
I'm saying right now, it's one breaker for everything. So when we do this, the best way to do it would be to have separate breakers for each building, so we don't have everybody down the busiest day of the fair. or something happens. We can-
You can have one food stand that decides to just go crazy on the amount of machines, which therefore blows the breaker, and that one stand now blows it for everybody. So instead, if you're gonna overload your system, you're taking yourself out, not everyone else with you. Yeah, no,
So these are not shared costs, it's 18,000.
I'm sorry, I thought it was shared.
Yeah, I have it written, it's 1790 for us to upgrade
That's our
our
part of it.
service. They would have to pay out of their pocket to connect to
Yeah,
that service, so we looked at it.
So I apologize. So we're looking for a recommendation of 17.9 to come from the fairgrounds fund balance to get this upgrade done.
I'll make a motion to that recommendation.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right,
I am going to assume, only because you said that, is the amount is approximately $17,900.
Yes.
it's a good assumption.
Just because that way it's recorded to, that way when I spend 25, hey, you guys have just approved whatever, so.
You'll have to have a fundraiser.
Exactly. All right.
If it happens to go over that, money's gonna come out of this fund, just give us a report on what
Yep.
the final numbers.
Exactly.
What replenishes that fund?
There's a line in the fairgrounds maintenance, I forget the exact name of it. So the budget 10,000 is spent 8 this year. That actually
My
goes in.
understanding was the finance chairman's per diem.
Not a problem.
So the unused portion carry over every
I've
year.
been used to giving her all this.
All right, next item I have, Mr. Chair, has to do with jail inspection costs. As I had spoken to this committee previously before, and if I misspeak, Supervisor Baker, please correct me. We had talked with a number of vendors to perform inspections on the jail building. We had talked with Tweet Garrett, we had talked with Fusion Integrated Solutions, and we had talked with Crafts regarding the roof. Tweet Garrett did not charge us anything specifically for the inspection. Crafts just gave us quotes on repairs to the roof. And Fusion had given us an estimate of not to exceed $4,200 to do their inspections. And I know that the bills coming in so far have been less than 4,200, but to make sure that we're keeping everything okay, I want to be able to approve $4,200 from the contingency fund to pay for those inspection costs.
What are they inspecting?
They did the electrical and structural. Tweet Garrett did plumbing. Fusion did electrical and structural, and Crafts looked at the roof. And so, again, at least from the report standpoint, all the inspections showed that there were no major deficiencies. There were some recommendations from an electrical and structural standpoint to look at some cracks. There was some plumbing that if they're going to do something with the roof, that there may be some drain pipe that you want to remove. There's some items within the jail itself that wasn't part of the inspection, a new toilet and sink and some showers and stuff like that that were in there, but don't have any major system issues. And so all of the inspections have shown that we meet 1968 code and that there are no major deficiencies. But my conversation or my correspondence with the jail inspector is that she just wants to be kept updated as to what we are doing to show progress.
So are we looking at a budgeted amount to do repairs?
That comes within the jail's budget line. So if we have some stuff there, we have some stuff already there that they're taking care of. We did have to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff, is when we had safety glass that we had to replace, that was taken care of. We had a couple bunk beds in the Huber dorm that we had to replace, and those are part of the current jail's budget lines.
Sheriff, is that just what we would consider maintenance type things, or are these upgrades for the inspector to be satisfied?
Right, that's all we're doing, like when the jail inspector came back through and she downgraded us from the 22 down to 16 was because of specific deficiencies or violations basically in these different areas. So as Administrator Feld said, the bunks in Huber, we had to replace a couple. They were so badly degraded, rusted, rotten, that she just didn't nobody sleeping in them. So that took us down 4, whatever it was. We had the glass, that's all been repaired. So those are like imminent, you must fix or nobody's going in there. Those, for the most part, have been taken care of. The one thing we're waiting for, it's a company called Stronghold for this fall. We've got to repair that mechanism in that main door, the entry door. We had our maintenance crew there again, trying to jerry rig that so it would operate. I mean, if that faults, we either aren't getting in or it's not locking. It's just going to fail. So that's going to be an expense we're probably going to incur this fall. And then just late afternoon yesterday, got the quote from Tweet Garrett for the toilet. So we got to look at how far we want to go with this whole toilet repair as far as what we're going to gain from it. One of the recommendations was to do all of them throughout Huber at these different cells to correctional grade, because over the years they weren't done to correctional grade.
These are like steel.
Right, they want stainless. So there's a conversation we'll have. I just got it last night, so I'm not going to throw it on this group. We'll probably bring it up at our committee first and then, work it up. But yeah, all we're looking at doing is those things that the jail inspector said you must absolutely do to maintain your housing capacity. These other things, if she's allowing us to, glide on through as long as we're showing progress, I'm great with that.
I think the other question or part of that was too is this part of your maintenance budget in the jail or is this gonna be above and beyond? And you're gonna try and fit it in as best you can. If you can't, there'll be something you have to ask for.
Absolutely.
Unless we can find other lines within this budget to offset, which is always what we look for first. So I'm asking for an approval of the transfer request up to $4,200.
Motion by Bill, second by Jeff. Any comments, questions?
Just a question. So this 4,200 is gonna come out of the contingency fund if you can't find places in their current budget to take it out of.
No, this one, because what the sheriff was talking about with the glass and the bunks and the like, that's coming out of his budget. The stuff that I'm talking about with the inspection costs is coming out of contingency. I consider that to be completely separate to the operation of the jail.
And it's gonna be in the administrator's budget and there's no room for 4,200 of inspections in the administrator's budget.
That is the reason that I separate them.
So in this memo here, then you have, it says these expenses will be assigned to the jail maintenance budget.
I'm sorry, in the future,
Okay.
any type of,
Yeah.
Okay.
The
The
repair.
repair.
yes, because there are minor repairs, those are, so I apologize.
Okay. Thank you for the info.
Yep.
All those in favor on the motion?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Carried.
I'll let my esteemed colleague.
I just wanted
take
one question to go back to the fairgrounds. It's you're building up that fund based on this maintenance line here, building maintenance
Mhm.
in fairgrounds. It's only $1,500 a year.
No, it's not the
It's
line.
not-
It's around 10,000 a
The
year.
grounds improvement line is.
Okay, it's somewhere else. So, all right. Because last year it looks like we spent every penny of it. So we're
Right.
we're punishing it at that rate. Okay.
Well, I try to keep Dave in check by not giving him a whole heck of a lot.
I would spend it on stuff like this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so May this year, we received our first half, $1.9 million of ARPA money. Again, this was not known at budget time last year. There is no budget for it. There is no plans to spend it yet. We've got until 2024 to identify what's to be spent on, until 2026 to actually spend it. The reason I'm asking for this is because when we do budget to actual comparisons for 2021, we're already 1.9 million different, and that's always going to be there. Number two, if we read statutes, if we're going to get money like this, especially in this town hall, we really should make a budget adjustment. So because of where we are, and because by the end of the year, I want to have a good budget to actual comparison, and it's good practice to adjust the budget for significant items like this. We would like to increase the revenue, and it does qualify as revenue, even though we're not spending any of it this year unless something comes up. And then the transfer the fund balance means we're gonna hang on to it until the future years when the decision is made what to spend it on. And that will revise the budget for 2021 to show that we've got 1.9 million more than we originally budgeted. Heads up though, we're gonna be getting the budget, administrator's budget in a couple of weeks. The original budget doesn't have this, and when we have the budget book, they have it there, it compares previous year adopted budget to this year proposed adopted budget. It is not going to be in there. We've been tripping over this 1.9 million through the whole process. Because in that process, we'll see what we had available last year and how we spent it, and what we have available this year and how we're going to allocate it. And the changes throughout the year, including this one, make that comparison much harder. So just be aware that this is going to come up, and there's really no way around that other than to completely exclude it, which means we're not including everything in the budget like we really should.
Right. And
Wouldn't it be less confusing if we just set up a separate revenue account, or like, it says fund balance, this would be in a separate account, and then when money is spent, basically using that revenue, it would be
Yes.
designated out of that account rather than
Yes.
putting it into our budget?
Well, the budget needs to include everything. So it isn't a separate fund. This is brand new fund, 280 ARPA grant. It's in its own revenue, but the budget needs to include all, and this is by statute, all known revenue and expenses.
So we're gonna be getting that revenue in this year.
It's already here,
Right.
yes, and we're gonna get another 1.9 million next year.
yeah, and the biggest, and at least from our standpoint, is that if we don't put it in the budget, then it looks like we're trying to hide it. And we're not trying to hide it. We received it. We're just not spending it. So we're setting it over here. Everyone's made aware of it by statute. We received it as revenue. We have to report it. It's over here. We're not spending anything yet. And that's all fine and good.
So is there gonna be so for people that actually read the budget, is there gonna be a notation
I'm
or
gonna
somewhere?
have
that-
For all-
note on
for-
every one of
For the
those.
3 people that do that, there should be some line that they should be able to see.
And to add something to it, because this is 2 payments, 2021, it's not in the original budget,
Right,
22 it is. So we're gonna be dealing with this 1.9 in all over the places. So I'm gonna have to footnote that on every schedule that has that comparison.
Does your next year's budget anticipate that next revenue?
We will get,
Yes.
yeah, we will get another payment of this. And because we know it now, while we're putting the budget together, that one will be in. So why is it in one, not the other? Because at the time we didn't know, now we do. Thanks.
But it should only show up in the summaries, right? It won't show up in any of the individual fund balances because it's got its own fund.
At the bottom of the non-department, there's this fund, so it's not in departments because the use is undetermined yet. So it's separated that way, but it's in the summary, yes.
Yeah, when we look at the summary, we're gonna be thrown off by that almost 2 million, which will be easy to subtract.
It'll stand up.
We will need a motion to approve this.
What are we doing with this money? Not to interrupt you, what are we gonna be doing with this money then in the future? What are the strings attached to?
Going to Vegas, baby.
Well, how many tickets?
Double our money.
All of you are invited. No, at least for right now, what my original thought has been is to wait until we get the second payment. And then let's have a serious discussion. And there's a wide variety of things we can do. I will put together some recommendations, but it's ultimately your guys' decision. My strong recommendation is this is money that comes once in a generation. So therefore, if we're going to use it, let's try to use it for something that is going to have a truly long-term impact. And I don't want to go into that too much right now because I really want us to focus on health insurance. But when it comes around to that May and the like, we can really start to have that conversation. Because there is a whole variety of different things that can be done. Because if we, depending on how we do this, if it's as lost revenue, and it all depends for, I'm sorry, and Paul will be able to better explain the scenario, but with the money, depending on how it becomes designated, depends on how you can spend it. So if it's as lost revenue, we're saying we had it as lost revenue. Now, if we want to spend it, we can spend it on virtually anything.
What they call it government services, which is pretty wide. But they don't want you to stick it in the bank.
Correct.
You can't use it to pay down debt. You can't put it in the pension fund. And I'm missing one smaller one, but there's very little absolute counts. So if you call
As
it lost
long as it's
revenue,
lost revenue.
then you say, okay, we earned it as lost revenue by their calculation of lost revenue. And now they want to know, okay, what you spend it, what kind of government service did you spend it on? That's a much more broad category.
Okay. And again, the other reason why there's no rush, because Paul had said it, is we don't have to designate how we're going to spend it until the end of 2024. And we don't have to spend it until the end of 2026. So we have, there is absolutely no rush. The only thing is Paul would have to be continuing to put in reports saying we haven't spent it yet, or we haven't designated, but that's not really a big issue. So we'll have that conversation in 2022, as long as the finance committee is okay with that, because ultimately I don't get to say.
I'll make a motion then to approve that. Recommended budget.
Second.
Motion by Joe, seconded by Tom. Any discussion? None, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Payments, you all got it. If you didn't get a copy,
I have one here.
well, that's one here.
Are there any questions?
We need approval of the supplemental payroll. It's right here. If you haven't signed it, or looked at it.
I'll make a motion to approve the supplemental payroll as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion by Tom, seconded by Jeff. All those, any comments? No comments? Okay. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
Health plan.
We have with us today familiar faces to, I'm sorry, in this corner. Dan-
Standing in
Yes.
5'11" and a half, 165 pounds,
There we
and
go.
balding.
Yes, that's Dan Van Goven, and in the other corner, not balding, Kelly Jagelski, both from Horton Insurance. You've seen them many times. We're going to be talking about health insurance. Part of the reason for this is every single year, the finance committee determines what the health plan is, if there's any changes, which then helps to determine what the health insurance premium is. And this year has, or the upcoming year will be very taxing or trying. So without saying any more, I will let Kelly and Dan kind of take the stage. So.
Wonderful. Great. I know him listen to. Hello, everybody. Thanks for seeing us this morning. There are a couple of new faces out in the audience. I am Dan Mongovan with the Horton Group. We are an insurance and employee benefits consulting firm, and we've been consulting with the county for quite some time. It is looking like 2022 is going to be a little bit more of a challenging year than we've had to deal with in the past. So we just want to share with you all a little bit about how we've arriven at the spot that we're in, and then talk, maybe most importantly, about some thoughts and strategies around how to manage this 2022 increase that we're going to be talking about in just a moment. So again, Dan and Kelly's just passed out a couple of pieces that we want to share with you. And we'll kind of move on to that second bullet point right away, which is just a high level claims overview on how the county's health plan has been running for the last several years. And so those percentages are what we call a loss ratio. The county has a self-funded medical plan, which means in a roundabout way, you kind of are the insurance company up to certain thresholds. Or as Mr. Felt mentioned, the stop loss amount of $55,000. So the county's kind of on the hook for all the claims, for all of the people that you insure, every member, we'll call it, not just your employee, but every man, woman, and child, dependents and children, to about that $55,000 mark. And we buy some reinsurance to protect the county against large shock loss claims above that $55,000 threshold. And the county collects premiums from your employees. The county sets premiums aside for its portion of its responsibility in this insurance mechanism. And so when it comes to these loss ratios, for example, 2016, that is to say, for every dollar that the county took in or saved itself in premium, 84 cents, 85 cents was paid out in medical and prescription drug claims. That's a good year. That leaves 15% for Paul to set aside into or to start building up what we call a reserve account. 2017, also a good year. 2018, a pretty good year. And then we had a little blip in the radar in 2020 and 2021. And of course, each of those years, we come here, we try and analyze your historical claim activity in order to predict what type of claim activity we're going to have in the next calendar year. And there's a bit of an art and a science behind that, right? If you all could tell me how many babies are going to be born and how many folks are going to be stricken with, life-threatening illness and injury, our job would be a little bit easier, but we appreciate that it doesn't work like that, right? So with, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, did you guys already mention why you skipped 2019?
Oh, well, I skipped 2019. 2019 was 105. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I made this. 2019 was 105.09%.
That's why.
There you go.
That was
It's all clear now.
that's the one bad.
Now we know.
105%, 2019. Yeah, look at that. If anything, I should have skipped 2020 with COVID. It's really thrown sort of a wrench in our world trying to understand if that's a normal year or not. Thank you for pointing that out. 2019, 105%. And so you see a little bit of a trend happening here, right? And it is fairly common. Claims run in cycles. Claim years go in cycles, and in the groups that we consult with oftentimes have a handful of good years, and then something turns and they have a handful of bad years, and you just got to kind of weather that storm. I'd love to be able to put my finger on why that happens. Hard to do that again, right? Hard to predict when the next cancer or rheumatoid arthritis or Crohn's disease or multiple sclerosis is going to pop up. And certainly we've got some of those things going on within this population. So what we're here to share with you today is part of that budget, which is kind of the next page looks like this. And this is part of the science behind our work, which is taking, again, your historical claims data, in this case, using 24 months of historical claims, cutting out some stop loss reimbursements, making some adjustments for some large claims. There's some trend factors in there. There's some COVID adjustments in there. And there's some weighting factors in there. That is to say, the most recent 12 months gets a higher percentage weight than the previous 12 months. We cobble all that together to come up with that bottom number, which is a PEPM, or a per employee per month claim rate. We then annualize that figure, bump it up against your current spend, include some additional fixed expenses that the county has, which is paying Humana to administer your claims, paying Humana stop loss premiums to help protect us again against some of those shock losses. And ultimately make a projection on what we're expecting. Again, if we had a crystal ball, what we're expecting the county's claim spend to be in 2022. And there's a second page to this that didn't make it, but Mr. Felt may have sent that out to everybody. You have a
No.
second page on yours?
No.
No, that was the one you sent. Dan only had the one page on it.
Okay, okay,
So I'll send it to Scott as a follow-up.
okay. So ultimately, what we're projecting for 2022 is a 17% increase in our overall spend. And if you're looking for what that means from a dollars and cents perspective, it's $558,000, which is certainly a more challenging renewal than we've probably had to deal with in the last handful of years. Now, that 17.7% increase is a projection at this point in time. We are still waiting on a couple of pieces of information that get factored into that, which would be your stop loss renewal from Humana, which is a pretty big piece of that pie. It's about you spend about 30% of your total spend on stop loss premiums, because we have, a fairly low stop loss specific deductible at $55,000. We pay a fairly high premium for that, but we do that to protect the county from large shock losses and crazy ebbs and flows in your budget, in your monthly budget. So this 17.7% also makes the assumption that we don't make any changes to anything. We just keep doing what we're doing today, carry that forward into 2022, kind of run status quo, and that's what our budget is calling for. And that's why we're here today, because we will make some changes and we do have some recommendations. Yes, sir.
So 17% is, we have to collect that much, between the employees and the county, we would have to collect 17% more.
That's right.
So the one change you're saying we'd have to do at a minimum is, if we did nothing, if we made no changes, the employees would have to pay 17% more as well.
Yes,
Everyone.
the employees would have to pay 17% more, and they pay, let's just say 20% of the premiums, and the
County
county.
would have to pay.
Yes, sir.
So when you say no changes, it still includes
A premium increase.
their premium.
Yep.
Yeah.
No benefit
The plan,
changes.
the plan would stay the same. We would have to increase the premium for everyone, county and employees, by 17.7%. And I want to make sure, because this at times confuses folks. Currently, the county pays 85% of all costs, not all, but from a premium standpoint, the county pays 85% of the premium. The employees pay 15% of the premium. The premium goes up 17.7%. Everyone's premium still goes up 17.7%. It doesn't matter that they're only paying 15%. If the entire premium is going up 17.7%, your 50% is still going to go up that 17.7%. So I want to make sure that that's clarified, that people aren't thinking, well, the employees are actually paying less. No, they're going to pay the exact same increase as the county will. Okay, sorry.
And to that point, so if I take that $558,000 that we're calling for, 85% of that, or the county's share, would be $474,000, which again, it's a ton of money. So we're here to.
I don't see that on this page. You said 558 is the increase?
Yeah, we'll email out following this interaction.
Yeah, we missed a page. I
The
apologize.
finalized
when we-
budget.
So what was our 85%?
474.
Or 74. And so now, like every employer, public, private, I don't care who you are, you deal with an insurance renewal every single year. They come up every 12 months, and the question becomes, what do we do? What can we do? What's reasonable? What's not? What's creative? What's innovative? And that's what we're here to talk a little bit about today. So some of these things are not so creative and innovative. They're just sort of market standard. And one of those would be making a plan design change to the health insurance program that the county employees have. For example, if the deductible is $750 today for a single. One way to affect some change to that 17.7% increase is to increase the deductible. And so in your packet this was sent out, I don't know, some time ago.
Last week and last month, and I sent it out this week.
Okay,
as well.
Well, within this packet, on page.
Looks like this. I'm assuming.
Yeah, you're right. We're gonna go to this.
Fourth page.
Yeah. So this is a menu of plan design changes. Matter of fact, there's 18 potential plan design changes that we're not gonna go through all 18. And nor do I think we're going to make hard and fast decisions today per se, but just want to sort of prime that pump. One of the options that we think is appropriate would be to increase the deductible a little bit. To go from $750 for a family and, to go from $750 for a single and $1,500 for a family, and bump that up to $1,000 for a single and $2,000 for a family.
And that's the first item on that list.
And so we've got some tools and actuarial resources that help us predict what that type of deductible increase would save us in premium. And in this case, making that change is worth about 2.5%. Okay, so you'll start following along that 17.7%. If we were to make this deductible change for calendar year 2022, we're now backing that thing down to about 15. Another plan design change that we think would keep us market competitive and still give us some premium reduction would be option number 7 on that sheet. And that's to change your co-insurance percentage, which today is 90% for in-network services, and bump that down to 80% for in-network services. That co-insurance change is worth 3.5%. Yes, sir.
So how do we compare that to just simply a 17% increase on the employees' premiums?
Mhm.
When you say, if we do a change to their deductible, let's shift more cost to the employees.
Mhm.
So they're gonna pay more out of pocket, but they're gonna have a lower premium. How do we know that that isn't, say, worse than just lifting their premium up by 17%?
Yeah, that's a fair question. The premium impact, a premium increase impacts everybody,
Yep.
right? And there's a fairness and an equity to that. The deductible increase doesn't necessarily impact everybody, right? You could argue it only impacts, well, there's not much argument, it will impact utilizers of healthcare, right? And they in turn will pay a little bit more into this self-funded plan pie than everybody else. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. We're likely going to need to do probably some of both, some premium increase and some plan design increase. I don't know that I've answered your question.
I don't know that we can answer.
Well, maybe
because of
just
the
ask-
unevenness of, if you're doing just a premium, everybody pays.
That's
for it.
right.
I mean, that's the whole idea behind insurance. right?
Yep,
But then when you shift the burden to those who are using the system that
Yep.
they're paying for,
Yep.
that burden gets heavier on them. I don't know that you could actually say, unless you just average it out over everybody, which you're saying isn't true. It's only the users, only the ones that get sick
yes,
will be paying more out of pocket that year.
yes.
And the ones who are not sick will benefit because their premium is lower, but they're not paying the higher deductible.
That's right. And who those people are year in and year out, you're right, it's averaged out, awfully tough to predict, again, who's gonna have claims in 22 or not. We have tools and resources, and history is a pretty good indicator, right, of what the future is going to look like. But yeah, it's hard for us to pinpoint exactly what that looks like.
What percentage of people meet their deductible on an annual basis?
Okay, that's what I was just gonna throw out there. We looked at the last couple of years. If I'm looking at 2019, I think because 2020 was a little bit of an aberration. We had 25.3 people that were single meet their deductible and 29.1 people with family coverage that met their deductible.
Is that percent of people?
Percent of people.
And so I can give you a little more. Right,
It's about 30% of family and 25% of single.
And then, and then on the out-of-pocket limit, and again, this is just the deductible and co-insurance out-of-pocket, because we've got 2 buckets, for lack of a better term. We've got one that's deductible and co-insurance, and then we've got a larger one that includes all the co-pays and all of those types of things. We only had 4.4% of people meet the single out-of-pocket limit of $2,500, and only 0.7% of those people with family coverage meet it. So you will have some people that all I do is go in for an office visit here and there, and I have some prescriptions. They may not hit the deductible or the out-of-pocket limit. You're going to have some that'll go in that what the co-insurance change won't impact them, because again, we've only got that 25 or 29% of the people that are going to impact the deductible. But the advantage of making those changes is twofold. One, it's a little bit putting the cost share on those people that are the higher utilizers, but it's also in the, maybe if my deductible is a little bit higher, I'm going to get a price on my MRI and figure out what that's gonna cost if I go someplace else, because I'm gonna be paying more of that cost share on the front end. So it's a little bit of a double impact. It's not just a straight cost shift. It truly is, people should, as their deductibles go up, as their co-insurance amounts go up, utilize things like the Direct Path program that we have to help predict what those costs are and where they can go that's more cost effective.
In our world, we'll call that consumerism. Just try, as difficult as it is, try to be a better consumer or shopper of healthcare. And that's, don't get me wrong, very, very difficult. Direct Path, though, does help quite a bit.
I mean, looking at these percentages where the majority of people are not meeting their deductibles and max out of pocket, it would seem that they're gonna pay less money than if you're gonna raise those max out of pocket and deductibles.
So like 70% will pay less. Well, they'll still pay.
They're gonna pay more.
They'll
they're
pay
gonna
an
the
increase.
17
Yeah.
minus this, right?
Everyone will pay more.
So do we look at these as
It's just how.
17 minus what
Yes.
this is here,
Yes.
or
So,
17.7?
and that's what we're trying to do, right? We were starting with a challenging number at 17.5, 17.7, and now it's like, what levers do we want to pull? Are we willing to pull? And what levers can we pull that will still keep us competitive? It's that balance of finance and human resource, right? That's what we're dealing with. So what can we do to try and reduce that 17% increase?
And I'll even put it from a more philosophical standpoint is, so if we continue just to raise the premium, you're gonna have employees that will opt out. Why? Because after a while, they'll start to not afford it because it's too high. And the other thing though is, so that's one part. Then throw in another part, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that in calendar year 2020, you've seen those large claimant lists every month. They have a profound impact on our cost share. In fact, in 2020, 57% of our spend was because of those large claimants. So what you could do then is focus on those large claimants because they're making it more difficult for everyone else. But again, from a philosophical standpoint, that's exactly the reason why you have insurance, because of catastrophic things like that. You don't want to be bankrupting those folks. So how do you balance not bankrupting those folks while still making it affordable for those people that don't have catastrophic? And there's no easy answer. Is that a fair?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, just if I'm saying something wrong,
No, that's insurance in a nutshell.
please
No,
Yeah.
jump
no.
in.
You got 22 people out of like 300 bodies that are driving 50+% of your spend. And that's might be jaw dropping for some of you. This is what we see every single day. Every group we have, whether you're 100 lives or 1,000 lives, a small percentage of your people are having a challenging year and they're driving the majority, 40, 50, 60% of your total spend. And there's not a whole lot to do about it.
And especially for our large claimants, because I review this with these folks. These are not because of lifestyle changes. If they're cancers, they're not lung cancers because the person was smoking 2 packs a day. It wasn't that, it's not those types of things. So are there other things that we can try to do on the lower end that is not these large claims? Yes, but that's a smaller type of thing. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, in looking at this whole list, is there any way, did you arrange that in any particular order in terms of the impacts on the employees or more favorable, or how do we look at all? There's quite a few.
There are quite a few. No, it was meant to be sort of a dealer's choice smorgasbord of options. And then the collective us looks at this and says, when I look at these, I think, what gives us the most bang for our buck, but impacts the fewest amount of people? That's kind of always where my mind goes, right? And there are things on here that are very unimpactful. Increasing the urgent care copay from $50 to $75 is worth 0.25%. To me, that's just sort of like nonsense and noise and not even worth the change. But we have picked out fairly strategically option 1 and option 7 because we do believe that those meet the criteria of biggest bang for our buck, impacting the fewest amount of people. And then there's this other sort of ancillary thing in the back of our minds, which is remaining competitive, right? And trying to not blow up our plan so much that not only are people not taking the plan or enrolling in the plan, but they're not working for you. They're going somewhere else. And that, of course, is a concern maybe now more than ever, right?
And we did include some basic survey information just from some counties in the area, just to give you an idea. Obviously, it's not intent to be all inclusive, but what are some of the other counties doing? And that was included in your packet.
And we're not.
What are other counties doing in the packet?
There was a, like what we call like a little bit of a benchmark. I guess that would have been page 2 or 3. Looks like this.
3.
Yeah, the one right before.
And, you know, I appreciate wanting to know what other counties are doing. I think there's relevancy in that. I think, though, that the instant this gets printed, it's sort of old because all of your county counterparts are probably having meetings like this right now for 2022. Some of them are having good years like we had in 16, 17, 18. Some of them are having challenging years, and they're going to have to figure out what are we going to do. And we're having these discussions with them. Deductible changes, co-insurance changes, copay changes, premium changes, right? So, you know, as much as this is accurate today, in 4 months, this is going to change for everybody, right? January 1, things change. And I still think where we're at today is competitive. A change to $1,000 deductible still keeps us competitive. And I expect, again, all these other counties are going to have to make similar changes in the near future as well.
How much is the 17.7% increase if we did nothing? How much does that affect the monthly premium then on the
employees?
Right.
So I can just tell you this a little bit. So today a single pays like $150 a month, $148 a month, right?
148.40.
So I'm just gonna take 148.40 times 1.177.
1.0.
So that goes up to 174. So about a $25 increase on the single. Is that what you're asking about, sir?
Mm-hmm.
And then a family, if somebody could rattle that,
840.92.
that's what you pay.
I'm sorry, a family. Sorry,
They
my
pay-
bad.
That's okay.
365.16.
365 goes to 407. So what's that? $42?
407.37.
Scott, when you're talking the numbers you just throw out, are those the 15% that the employee was?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's their monthly.
Yes.
That's what comes out of
Their
their paycheck,
contribution,
their payroll
Correct.
deductions. So if we did nothing, singles contribution goes up an additional $25. Family goes up an additional 42.
What is the, just to get a perspective of the industry as a whole, do you have the average of what
Percentages?
percentages are going up? Are we an anomaly, or is it pretty typical with the 17% increase?
Oh, 17's on the higher side. Bless you. But we haven't had 7. It's not like we're stacking up 17s on top of one another. Last year was 3 something. I don't remember having a double digit here, actually.
Well, I'm not talking here. I'm talking if you're looking around.
And I'm not trying to dodge. I'm suggesting it's well, to just tell you it's all over the map. Industry articles and such suggest that medical trend and inflation alone is roughly 8 to 10%.
The reason I ask that is that I don't think our objective here is to eliminate the 17%. At least maybe that's not realistic to do that. We should at least decide what we're trying to get down to remain competitive.
Yep.
Well, and we do have one other topic that we want to discuss, and I think the goal is not to expect you to walk out of the meeting today with it's going to be this percent and here's the 5 changes we're going to make. It's more of a here's the levers we can pull to try and get some combination of the two. And I would agree with you. It'd be helpful to know, what are we trying to get to? Are we looking to pull a little bit out of reserve and maybe mitigate that along with plan changes and a program we're going to be talking about called Family Savings Plan? So we're trying to, I guess, educate today with the idea that at our next meeting, when we've got some final numbers on the stop loss renewal and an additional month of claims, to figure out what that looks like.
If you were to ask me, then dope is, no, I don't want to bring 17.7 down to zero. And to a certain degree, I'm not sure that I want to put 17.7 down to a single digit increase. We have, I'm just gonna round it, call it 18 for simplicity's sake. So we have an 18% increase. And I think what we need to do from both a county from a county standpoint is that's a legitimate 18% increase. It's not like it's made up. So to now pull a bunch of levers and put it down to 5%, I think to a certain degree might be disingenuous because we're not then possibly addressing what the issues may be from a plan standpoint. I'm not saying that we need to change the plan. All I'm saying is we need to have a serious conversation about it. And I told Dan and Kelly that we want to do that in 22 anyways. But in that same respect, would I like to not have it be 18 and bring it down to maybe 12? Yeah, because again, when we talk about 18, and while that sounds like only $25 a month for single and 42 for family, well, 42 for family is close to $500 for those families. And the other thing that we have to look at least if I'm an employee, I'm looking at what my final paycheck is, right? So if my insurance is going up 18% because we've made no changes, and my increase is only 2%, I may have less take-home pay than what I did before.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, that would be very concerning to me as an employee, and so it should be very concerning to us as the people that employ them. And so again, how do you make that balance? And so I hope I've answered the question. I don't want to go to 18. I want to bring it down, but I don't want to put a nice paste over it, and therefore we're not really paying attention to what might be underlying issues.
I think we've answered the question that we're not trying to go
To zero.
17 to 0 or 18 to
Correct.
0, but 10 to 12 sounds like that may be the place we're hunting for, because that would be consistent with.
That's what I would like to do. Again, you guys get to make that decision. I don't. That's what I'd like to do because it's double digit, which therefore means that this is an issue we need to address. And the employees understand that this is something that we need to talk about seriously and have a discussion. Yet we're also not just throwing up our hands and saying, here, pay the entire premium.
And we also contemplated a whole different health care,
Which is what
which
we'll
is
do in
2022, right?
Because right now, what we have, and I'm not saying it's a wrong thing, right now, what we have is a PPO, which means that any employee can go to any health system that they want within reason. So, but there are other options that we could explore. I'm not saying that we should do it, but we should have that conversation. You have some employees that talk about the state plan. We could talk about, instead of a PPO, we have an HMO. We could do something where it's a loaded, what is it called? A low premium, high deductible plan. There's different options, and I'm not promoting any one, but if we're going to be serious about it, it's going to take more than 3 meetings that we have right here. That may only be an hour. We would want to have multiple meetings, and we would want to, at least I would, I'd want to include the employees into this, because I had asked a question about, well, what happens if we had went to a HMO? Well, that has disruption because not everyone goes to the same provider. So how does that mix things up, that we're now requiring people who used to have become used to their doctors at Bellin, that they now have to go to Purveyor? And is that worth that disruption? So a lot of different issues there, which I would like then us, as well as some employees, to really discuss in depth in 2022. I just want to talk about this time around what we're talking about for a premium increase and any plan changes, and then really delve into it in more in depth in 22.
Makes sense?
It looks like there's only like 4 things on this whole page that are really impactful, right? We're trying to get down.
Yep. And the first three are varying levels of deductible increases.
But do they, you don't mention out-of-pocket maximum ones. Do they change the out-of-pocket maximum as well?
Yeah, typically they would, and you just don't get that much bang for your buck in an out-of-pocket max change because so few people
Right.
actually hit their out-of-pocket max.
Okay.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
And since you're self-funded and you're the insurance company, it's different than being fully insured, but since you're self-funded, we've got to be fairly meticulous about these assumptions and these decrements that these plan design changes and the value that they bring, because you don't get any value if the employees aren't being impacted by the change, right? And I mean that in every sense of the word. If we increase the out-of-pocket max to $4,000, but nobody ever hits a $4,000 out-of-pocket max, we've saved nothing, right? Okay.
I was about to say that you could take if 0.7% of the family met the $5,000 deductible, if we were to up it to 20,000, we really haven't saved much of anything.
But
I guess what I was trying to make
traditionally-
sure was that if you're gonna increase the co-insurance
Yep,
from 90 to 80,
yep.
they're just, is it implied that we're also increasing the out-of-pocket max? So
No.
they're just
No,
paying,
they're getting there
they're
quicker.
10% more of,
They're just getting there
yeah,
faster.
so I'm okay.
So again,
That's exactly right. That's
Right.
intuitive. That's exactly right.
And for options 4, 5, and 6, if we did want to increase the out-of-pocket by a little bit, because it's 2,500 and 5,000, you're seeing 0.24, 0.45. The only one you're really getting is if you increase the deductible and co-insurance out-of-pocket max by $1,000 for single, and basically you're double 2,000 for family, it's 1.74%. At this point, we're really only proposing the deductible change.
Or the co-insurance.
Or
Well,
Right,
both.
the deductible and the
The
co-insurance, but
recommendation
not
right
the
now is
out-of-pocket.
option 1 and option 7. Are there other questions right now about any of this? And if they're, sure, go ahead.
So basically what we're trying to do right now is to come up with a way to set a premium and a plan for 2022. We're not talking about moving from self-funded to conventional.
Correct, we are not.
We just want to tweak our current plan with it. Next year we'll talk about legal
Correct.
changes.
At least that, again, that's my recommendation to you. I can't, you guys get to make the decision. That's my recommendation, because if we do something too quickly, we really don't know what the ramifications would be. And I'd want to make sure that we have plenty of input before we started to do that.
It seems to me, and we've had this discussion in the past about the conventional plan versus the self-funded plan. And if you look at the state plan, if I'm reading this wrong, the anticipated premium is about a 10% increase on a single and a 9% on a family for 2022 in the state plan, unless I'm reading that wrong, versus the 17. Now, because we're self-funded, does that make the premiums, and depending on what type of plan you have, are the premiums going to be a little bit higher than a conventional plan?
Well, Let
comparing
me
the same
throw in
plan?
a few things on the state plan. The first is you couldn't get into the state plan for 1/1 even if you wanted to, because they require a 120-day time period. So even if we were looking at it, we couldn't do it this year. When I put the information together, the 2022 rates weren't out there yet, and I had assumed, I think, a 10% increase over what they were now. The other thing that comes into play with the state plan, if you want to look at the employee perspective, is generally speaking, the way the employer finances the plan is you've got the broad network plan that you can go to, which is the most expensive plan, and then you've got some component of an HMO type program where you've got a narrow network like Scott was mentioning before. Generally speaking, most participants in the plan are going to fund their 85% on that lowest cost plan. So if I'm going to go into the HMO option, that 85% is going to be based on that. Normally, the way it's set up is if I want that PPO type plan, I'm going to pay the whole cost difference. I'm not going to, as a Kewaunee County, I'm not going to pay 85% of each of those plans. So from an employee perspective, if they want to buy up, for lack of a better term, to that broad network, they're actually going to pay quite a bit more because they're going to pay that whole cost difference. plans. So there's some differences in methodology with how the state plan works. You also brought up self-funding. Self-funding, generally speaking, is going to save you in the long run 5 to 7%, I think, over what an insured product would be, because you're not paying state premium taxes. In those good years, you get to build up your reserve like we have in a couple of the years. In the bad years, you're pulling out of that reserve. When you're with a fully insured carrier and you have one of those loss ratios with like the 83% as an example, they're not generally giving you money back. They're keeping that profit. So normally a self-funded plan is going to allow you a little bit of flexibility so that your increases aren't as big and you're able to, I guess, participate, for lack of a better term, in those good years.
The easiest way to think of it is this way. The total cost of claims, let's call it 2.5 million. So the insurance claims are going to be 2.5 million because that's what's generated. If you're going to a conventional plan or a state plan where someone else is therefore being the insurer, what they do is within the premium, they lock in what they consider to be their profit margin. And with good years, they get to keep everything that's good. With bad years, yes, it does eat into their profit margin, but then what they'll do is they'll raise the rates next year. From a self-funded standpoint, if there are good years, we get to keep what would have been the difference as opposed to the insurance companies. So am I doing a bad job?
Good.
Yep.
So in that respect, the reason why self-funding is a better way to go is because in bad years, we're going to pay regardless. But in good years, we get to keep that excess. So for the year that was 84, we got to keep that extra 16%. And that extra 16%, we could then use to cover us for any bad years.
What do we have in surplus right now?
No,
No, that's what we've been working on that.
We've, at the end of 2020, health insurance, 266,000, dental's 208. I always look at them together because we really don't need 208,000. That went built sometime previously. So we combine them, we're at 11%. We really ought to be a little bit higher than that.
And so that combined number is what, 400 some plus?
474.
474.
I have a question. So the plan design sheet in here that describes the state plan design, is that right?
Yes.
And then the numbers you estimated on the next page in terms of premium, which plan are those costs again?
It was the plan that was the closest to your current plan.
Is it
I'd
the
have to look back at it.
deductible program option, or the local program option? And there's the high deductible one. I see that.
And so the state plan, I think people think of it as like one plan. It's like there's like 20 plans to choose from.
I understand that. You can understand what you're comparing this against. I want to know what you said, here's what the state plan is going to cost, but I don't know what plan you're comparing it against. So you have an apples to apples.
Isn't the state plan, and when I was working for the city of Algoma, we were on the state plan for numerous years.
Still are.
Still are. And City of Algoma are all of our employees. Okay, we're on the state plan, so when the plan comes out, these are the companies that are available to you in Kewaunee County.
Yeah.
So that's who you have to pick from. So you can take any one of those, but that's what it costs. And these are the premiums for that service.
Right, and usually what happens, what Dan was saying is that as a city or as a county, we would say, and let's say we're staying at 85-15, the county will pay 85% of typically the lowest plan. So let's say that the lowest plan is $1,000, we will pay $850. You have to pay $150. Now, and that's the lowest plan. If the next plan is $1,200, we're paying $850, you're paying $350. If the next plan is $1,400, we're paying $850, you're paying $550. So again, while yes, you have a little more choices, typically, though you could do it differently, though I wouldn't, is that you do a percentage of whatever this plan is. It wouldn't necessarily have to be the lowest, but that's typically what is done. We will pay a percentage of what is the lowest plan. And anything above that, you're paying the dollar for dollar difference. And so while it may seem like to the employees that you're saving money, it honestly may not be, because what the lowest plan in the state, or what we're paying 85% for, you're wanting something different. That dollar for dollar change hasn't saved you any money. I'm not saying that that is for sure, but that can happen.
That's a discussion for another day. We're not.
Correct.
The program that I priced was the deductible program option. It says 4/14, so it's 500 individual, $1,000 family.
Okay, so then that's what you estimated that cost is. And that maximum load, let's assume we're terrible and they're gonna give us the max load. How many years you gotta pay the max load?
2 years, I believe.
Thank you.
And in full transparency, we typically work, well, we don't work with groups in the state plan. You don't need us. So our experience there is limited. Our experience is actually taking groups out of the state plan and into a group sponsored program like you have. So I want to be clear that if we seem wishy-washy on that state plan stuff, it's because we are. It just isn't a space that we have intimate knowledge in.
And
We
it's
will
not
help you.
important specific. They don't work with brokers or consultants for
Yeah.
that matter. It's just not the way the plan is set up.
And I'm just looking at this, at 17% of our existing premium, we're up to 2872. You look at their max loads plans, 29, 31, 20, 55, 25, 91. And we were right there. And that's only a 2-year max load. Just saying.
Yeah, and the tough part is, and I don't know if this can be underscored enough, that lowest cost plan, and some of these programs even here, Dean Health and Network Health Plan, you can't go to Aurora, period. WEA Trust is Aurora only. The Trust East Network, you can't go to Bellin or Theta or Prevea.
And that's where the disruption part comes in.
And so we could do that too. We could put a self-funded program in place, just like we have today, that excludes some of these provider systems, lops off of people, makes the people a little bit upset, but probably saves 8 to 10% in premium. I'm telling you that we can do that. We can go to Anthem, have a, okay, forget about Anthem. They're not very good. We can go to somebody else, stay self-funded, cut some providers out of our network and save some money. We can do these things.
Which is the
Now you're
whole
going
point.
to an HMO.
Which is, yeah, exactly, which is, because what the state plan is pick your HMO. That's essentially what it is. Which, if you're picking your HMO, it's excluding you from others.
And I
Well,
would be willing to bet that if you were to go that route, the employees are gonna have a connection. When you got the people that are on a higher end that are receiving this critical care, they're seeing a specific provider that we may be cutting out of the network.
and that's where I want to have that discussion. So if we're talking about that, then what we could do is we could go to Prevea and say, we want to direct all of our employees to you. What can you do for us for a premium? And I am going to assume that the current premium we pay now will be decreased.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word significant. Well, I'll say significantly, but what that percentage is, I don't know. But if we were to go from a PPO strictly to an HMO, which therefore causes disruption, we will save money, as will the employees. But you will have a certain number of employees that will not be happy about that.
But if I understand this right, we would pick one HMO.
No.
Prevea. The
Well,
state plan, you can pick from
You can pick
several.
whatever's
Correct.
So
available
that's where
in
the
your
state plan
region.
does have that advantage.
You can, but keep in mind, I've heard this from other companies that have come out of the state plan. Let's say Dean is the one that's the lowest cost this year, and next year it's WEA Trust, and you want to pick that plan that's least expensive. You may have to change providers every other year because one of them includes Prevea and another one includes Aurora. If you want that low cost plan, you're going to have to change providers for your whole family. So it does give you choices, but keep in mind the low cost plan this year is not necessarily the low cost plan next year.
But the employee who wants to stick with their
Yep.
doctor.
Can buy up.
That HMO, if it goes up, and they'll pay the difference.
That's right.
And if it's worth it to them, they can pick that one and stay with the doctor.
Yep.
Whereas if we went with our own HMO, we have one plan and we'd be excluding a hard exclude.
Well, and it depends on the plan too. It would be harder on a group of your size, but there are some carriers out there that will allow you to do some sort of a dual choice. Again, harder to do on a group of Kewaunee County size, but you've got these people that are in the broad network and you've got these people that are in the narrow network and they can pick.
And I'm not wanting to stop the discussion, but what we're talking about
Yeah.
right here is the types of discussions that I want us to have in 2022.
For
Is what
23,
we're,
yeah.
or 2022 for 2023, because what we're talking about here is a lot of these different choices have these different impacts and results. And I would strongly suggest to this committee to try to do that now is not going to give justice to what the impact of the decision would be. So what I think we're looking at right now is what is the changes we can make to the current plan from a premium standpoint, and then what is the percentage increase that we would eventually want to do. But I want to make sure, most importantly, that are there other questions that the committee has at this present time?
Is there any recommendation for a drawdown of our fund balance, or is that a little?
No, we're
No.
below, no. We're below our 16%. I know some people throw out this $1 million figure, but Manitowoc is 4 times the size of us and they had theirs at $1 million too. So we measure it as a percentage of expenses and we should be at about 16%. We're only about what? 8?
11.
Even if we combine the two together, which is the way I look at it. That's 11.
And
Yeah, 11.
the reckless comment is worthy, right? That fund balance in technical sort of self-funded plan terms is actually for what we're talking about. If you were to ever leave your self-funded mechanism and go to the state plan, you're still going to have what they call run out expenses of your self-funded plan. Let's just say we go to the state plan on January 1st. The claims that your people have on Christmas of this year, they won't get paid until January or February. And your self-funded plan's done. We're not taking in any more premiums January 1st, right? So it's good to have a few $100,000, really a couple months worth of typical claims expenses to fund those run out expenses of claims on Christmas and Thanksgiving for that matter. Make sense? And for a while, that fund balance was 0. I mean, we've worked hard to get that thing back. I'd love to siphon 100,000 off of that to make this easier for the county and for your people. We do need to be responsible
And
about
what was said before, all it's doing is kicking the can down the road. Hasn't solved anything. It just made a fix for this year, but the problem still exists.
How do we get some of that 1.9 million from the government? Let's get some ARPA money in this health insurance fund. Let's go.
No.
Oh, okay.
I know Ernie said it was all gonna be free.
Just like college.
Scott, are you okay with us talking about family savings?
Yeah,
once
go
we
ahead. Well,
conclude
let's, I
this?
know Doug has a question, then we'll go to family savings.
I was just wondering if the process today, we are not going to pick anything, is what I keep hearing people say, right?
You could if you wanted to, but again, we don't have to. I would,
So we want to understand all the choices, right? That's the first thing we want to do today.
correct. The thing that I will say is this. I would prefer that we have a finance committee meeting before county board and try to make a decision. If not, then absolutely deadline that first week of October be done. And here's the reason why. While the plan doesn't go into effect until January, then you guys get to deal, what happens is there's open enrollment and all the administrative things that have to happen. And so therefore, that makes it very difficult to get those things done in that period of time. So that first, since we typically meet the first Friday of the month, no later than that. I would
That's
prefer,
just so-
I would prefer mid-September, but no later than that first Friday in October.
The changes have to be rolled into the budget. and we approve them.
Correct, and that we still can do. I worry about from the plan standpoint, which again, I don't have to deal with, none of us do, but it is amazing how tedious that those administrative changes can be.
if we make a recommendation, we all agree, we vote on it.
Yep.
Finance committee, first week of October, you would
Uh-huh.
then make that part of the choices in the open enrollment for the employees?
Well, what happens is depending on, again, what those choices are. If we're now doing open enrollment, yes, we have to make them aware. So let's say just for,
I guess I'm only
example.
asking from a process standpoint.
from
We
a
haven't-
process
we haven't
standpoint, if
approved
we
the
now
budget.
know that deductible's $1,000 and the co-insurance goes from 90 to 80, as we put out our open enrollment forms, so we're telling them that the deductible has gone up to 1,000 for a single and 2,000, I forget what it is, 2,000 for a family. So now the employees have that information to decide whether they want to enroll.
Okay. But again, I was just saying, it isn't really cooked until we vote on the budget as a whole. It could be changed by somebody.
It could be, but more often than not, and I've been here almost 7 years, and I think from a historical standpoint,
We
I
should-
have never seen a county board change anything from a county health plan on the floor. That's why you have been designated as the committee to make those changes, and those get recommended in, no different than how executive committee decides salaries and wages. And I have not seen salaries and wages change, a pay plan changed a specific on the floor. That's usually done within committee.
Can I just make a suggestion? And I would like to see this committee sit down at a special meeting just with health insurance on the agenda only. And not a half hour before a county board meeting.
Okay.
But sometime in later September, so we can get this done before the regular October finance meeting. Just concentrate on health insurance. So if the meeting takes a half hour, or if it takes 3 hours, but let's get it done rather than trying to squeeze this in before a county board meeting.
Then if I may,
That's just my,
what I'll do is I'll talk to my 2 Horton colleagues as to what their availability is in September, and then I will send out dates to the committee, and then we can set a time if that's okay.
Would you prefer that as opposed to if we were to do that in our October meeting? I mean, I don't know that we're gonna have
oh, you mean at our regular October?
a regular October meeting, just not hustle it through a half hour before the board meeting. I agree. I don't wanna
I
sit
don't like
down
to do
with
that
that.
either. I'd rather do it in the.
But we could do it at our next
Yeah.
I
October
just
meeting.
wonder how close we are to a recommendation. We haven't heard them all, right? There's another,
There's
There's
one,
another-
there's one last one.
okay,
Yes.
yeah, I'm feeling like. I'm trying to settle it in with something.
So I'll let you guys, I'll just stop. It's called the Family Savings Plan, and I will let Courtney discuss the concept behind it and how it works.
So another strategy in the land of employer-sponsored health plans is trying to reduce your risk by covering less people, right? And there's a couple ways to do that, and this is particularly pertains to working spouses. All right, so maybe you've heard of things called spousal surcharges or spousal carve-outs, which is to say, if you've got a county employee who has a spouse that's on the county's plan and has a job, is gainfully employed full-time somewhere else where they offer benefits, you might ask yourself, is it the county's responsibility to cover that person? I mean, what about that other employer who's kind of getting off the hook by not covering their own employee, right? And you call that philosophical, whatever. So over the years, there's been things called spousal carve-outs, which says if you have a working spouse with access to coverage elsewhere, they cannot be on the county's plan. A little harsh, okay? A step down from that is this concept called a spousal surcharge. Same idea, if you've got a spouse with access to coverage elsewhere and they want to be on the county's plan, that's okay, but they're going to pay an extra, in addition to the $356 that you pay a month as a family, because you have a working spouse, you have an extra $50 or $100 a month or per paycheck surcharge, just to get those folks thinking twice about whether or not the county is the right plan for them, and to also ask them to pay a little bit more because they do have access to other coverage, right? 2 very common concepts. Enter family savings plan, which is sort of a blend of all of this with a pretty darn soft landing. The family savings plan is a mechanism to help the county and help families that have working spouses that are on the plan. And what it says is this only pertains to people that have working spouses. So anybody that's a single on the plan or that's single in general, they close their ears to this concept. This says if you've got a working spouse and they're on our plan, the county will actually help you get off of the county's plan and onto that working spouse's plan. Okay, so I don't know, what's an employer in the area that lots of people?
Kewaunee School District.
Okay, the school district, wouldn't they love that? Oh, boy. So let's say we've got folks that are on our plan who's got a working spouse at the Kewaunee School District. We tell those people and educate them that if you leave the county's plan and go onto the school district's plan, we'll help you do that. If it costs you more money to be onto the school district's plan than it does on the county's plan, we'll pay the difference. So if it's $356 a month for a family to be on this plan and it's $400 to be on the county's plan, on the school district's plan, we'll pay you that $42 differential, $44 differential. You with me so far? Also, any claims that you have, out-of-pocket deductible copays or co-insurance expenses on the school district's plan, we'll reimburse you for those. We will pay all of your out-of-pocket expenses that you incur since you left our plan and went to the school district's plan. You with me? So, I don't know, you're a family of four, you got tonsils, you got a broken collarbone, you had $4,000 in out-of-pocket expenses. It was probably $60,000 in claims, but only $4,000 in out-of-pocket for your family. The county will reimburse that. Right? Kind of crazy, but kind of cool.
We didn't save any money so far.
You did, because that family that had $4,000 in out-of-pocket expenses to them actually incurred probably $60,000 worth of bills in the hospital.
Because our 85%.
Not because they're 85%, because what we pay as individuals out of our pocket is a fraction of what it actually costs for those services, right? So let's say that same family goes to the Kewaunee School District and somebody has falls off their snowmobile, breaks a collarbone, spends a night in the hospital. It's $30,000 in claims, but their out-of-pocket expense is only whatever their out-of-pocket maximum is on the insurance plan at the school district. And let's just say it's $5,000. We pay them $5,000. We avoided a $30,000 snowmobile accident that the county, being a self-funded employer, that's on you. That is part of the $2.5 million that we spent, right? So it's an interesting concept. There are some nuances. I gave you the quick skinny. We've got this at a couple of employers. Public sector in particular is kind of finding this to be pretty worthwhile to explore. City of West Dallas, City of Menominee Falls are two that Kelly works on that are doing this. It takes education. I mean, there's a fairly heavy employee education component to this concept, because you need to get them to understand we're not out to get you. As a matter of fact, if you really boil this thing down, the people that benefited from this concept the most are the people that have health insurance claims expenses, because we're telling them, if you leave our plan, we'll pay all of your out-of-pocket expenses. And it's those people that, if we can get them to understand this and they feel comfortable with it, they will actually bet. It's a pay raise.
So think of it this way: if your maximum out of pocket is $5,000, and you're traditionally a high user of healthcare because you have a family member that continues to have medical issues, then what happens is that $5,000 that you would usually have to pay out of your pocket, you pay out of your pocket, but you're completely reimbursed 100%. So right there's $5,000 that you have now saved. If there's any difference between the premiums, that's covered as well. So that's paid for. So for high users of medical care, this is actually, from a dollars and cents standpoint, it's very advantageous.
Do we try to shift everybody but the employee in that family over?
Either or works. If just the spouse leaves, or if the spouse and the kids leave, they qualify. If the employee leaves too, great. The prerequisite is you have to be on the county's plan today, and you have to leave the plan to qualify for the benefits. Good question. Does that make sense? Did my response
I mean.
So
the
you'll have
pushback-
some where it'll just be the employee that leave, or the spouse that'll leave and the children that'll leave and the employee stays on the plan. You'll have others where the whole family will leave. At Menominee Falls, they have a fully insured plan. They actually had, I think, between 24 and 28 people come off the plan.
I guess my comment is that employees are wise to this. They're already pushing people the other way. I know my employer looks at that.
They're about a
Well,
hundred more lives than you
yeah,
are,
so-
I think.
I'm sorry. Let me try and restate that comment. So other employers might already be doing this too. Other employers are pushing working spouses off of their plan. Was that the comment though?
Right, like where I work, you pay a surcharge
Yeah.
if you are asking your spouse who's already working somewhere else to be on the
Yeah.
plan for my company.
Really
You'll
common.
reimburse the surcharge as well.
But
Wow.
what I'm saying is they would be trying to push, how would they be willing to accept the family, to take on that extra burden themselves? Why wouldn't they be pushing back as hard to keep them on?
Because they don't have consultants that are bringing them these strategies to avoid that. In the
Unless
same
they-
way that we're
yeah.
probably accepting spouses today that
That could
are.
be insured elsewhere.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with this. This is not meant to be punitive. We're not out to get people. This is a pretty intuitive strategy taking place in our world that the more progressive employers are moving towards. And it's hard to debate the idea of insuring less people.
So let me, only because we've seen where the advantages, I then asked you, is there a scenario where this actually costs the county money?
That was my question.
Yeah, which
What's
is
the drawback?
Yeah, so what's the drawback? The drawback is we spend lots of time and energy educating people on this and nobody takes advantage of it. Bit of a soft cost. There's a drawback that if a bunch of healthy people leave our plan, follow me for a moment here, right? Those healthy people, that's the wrong word.
Okay,
Low
go take.
utilizers.
Low, there you go.
Thanks,
You'll-
sorry about that. Low utilizers. If we have a lot of low utilizers that find value in this and leave the plan, they are no longer paying their 15% share of the premium and helping us fund this health insurance pie. And they're leaving and we're not reimbursing them anything. And we didn't get a whole lot of value in that low utilizer leaving our plan. But in theory, the low utilizers won't
Not
find a
costing
lot
us
of
much.
value or interest in this.
Well,
Why
they
leave
would
something that's comfortable?
If the school district's plan's cheaper,
Yeah,
I'm gonna save money in premium, and oh, by the way, they're gonna pay me out of pocket.
Yeah,
So
and then
why
the-
wouldn't I go?
right. Why aren't you there now? Is a question I'd ask. If the school district's plan is, and rhetorical, but, right? If it's cheaper now, then why are you here?
Well, and to give you
Well,
some
we broke the rule.
examples, one of the reasons why we like this option and the reason, because we've debated in the past, the spousal surcharge, the spousal carve out, and the biggest thing hold up on that has been the healthy people leave. The biggest advantage you're getting here is you're giving a lot greater incentive to those people that have the large claims to come off the plan. And even if you only get one or two of them. At the Village of Menominee Falls, they cut their drug costs in half because a couple of the people that left were the specialty drug users. I was doing the educational meetings, and the way we typically would roll this out, we would make a group meeting mandatory. I don't think we've done that in the past, but when we've made them voluntary, we've had 5 attendees. So we would want to have a mandatory group meeting. And then once we explain the concept, we want individuals that are married and maybe would have the opportunity to have kind of a one-on-one with the people from Family Savings Plan to talk this through. I brought my spouse's open enrollment stuff. Let's talk this through. But ultimately, I had people coming up to me saying, you mean basically I'm getting a $5,000 raise. I hit my out-of-pocket limit every year. I've got a specialty medication that I'm taking. Now you're suddenly telling me I'm paying nothing for that. I mean, I actually had a couple of people in tears at the meeting because they were thinking of how much better it would make their family life. Now, down the road, could somebody else do something similar? They absolutely could. They could put in that spousal carve out, in which case you're not able to join their plan. But most people haven't caught on to that yet. And again, I haven't run into that, at least in the greater Milwaukee area. We've only got a handful of employers. This program's been out there a couple of years. It's going pretty well. And like I said, they literally did have at least a couple of those people that were high utilizers of medical care, and they were fully insured, but just the drug costs a lot of what's driving the healthcare costs here are specialty drugs. If we only get one of those high utilizers off, we're probably more than going to pay for the savings that we get, even if we have 2 or 3 of those maybe low utilizers that think, you know what, I'm going to save on my premium or whatever it is.
How many people did you say you had signed up for that?
Menominee Falls had very high utilization. I would say the city of West Dallas only had, they're much larger and they probably only had 12 people sign up. The village of Menominee Falls, I think, is about 100 more lives than you
Yeah.
guys, and they had between 24 and 28.
Is it all in the first year or did it take a few years to build up?
They've already, no, they actually, we did a very good job at the employee meetings. They had a lot of people sign up for the one-on-ones. I think they had like 22 the first year, and now they're up to between 24 and 28. But it really is, how do you communicate it? You get a lot of people and you almost need somebody in the audience to say, like, what's the catch? And we usually build that into the presentation. The only thing that I think we didn't talk about, and again, there's all kinds of weeds that we could get into if we were going through this, is it has to be a network health provider. So if I'm going to my spouse's plan and I'm going to the doctor, you are eligible to get your deductible, your coinsurance, your out-of-pocket paid, but it does need to be a network health plan provider. We did a provider match on the group as a whole. We looked at 12 months of claims. I think it's 87.4% of all the claims here would be in the network health plan. So if you have somebody that's going to somebody that's not in network health plan, they could get reimbursed for all their other stuff. They could get reimbursed for their drugs, but that person that's going to somebody that's not a network health plan provider would pay out of pocket. But again, the examples we gave in the meeting, if it's my gynecologist I want to go to, I see them once a year, it's a preventive thing, it's going to be paid 100% by the other plan anyway. I can still go to that provider because I'm going to get 100% coverage. But if I'm going to get a knee surgery, maybe I go to somebody that's going to be in network health plan to give me my knee surgery. So there's definitely a communication component that is very, very important. Will allow more time in the meetings than we typically would. It's probably going to be an hour meeting at least instead of like a 45-minute meeting with some additional time to ask questions. And we would encourage people to have those one-on-ones if they're intrigued, interested, thinking about it.
But just to give you a sense, you get like 125 employees. Our analysis suggests that maybe 19 people would even qualify for this. Right, you got to think, like, how many people are on our plan today that have a working spouse? It's not everybody. We're talking about, we're narrowing that thing through the funnel real quick.
I'm assuming we have to offer this to everybody. You can't pick and choose because that wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, no, it's got to be offered to everybody.
But everybody that's on the health plan, you do not need to offer it to people that are not on the plan right now.
Right.
And the one thing that's a little sticky wicket would be, what if you have somebody today that takes their spouse's plan, doesn't take the county's plan, and they go, okay, I want that. They don't qualify because they're not on your plan today, because the county doesn't get a benefit by exiting somebody off of their current plan. Admittedly, a little sticky wicket. We could offer it to them, but I don't think that's a good idea. I don't recommend it. Right?
No, I would-
Because then people would be purposely coming to.
And
to then
that's
do that.
what could happen. So somebody that says, oh, I'm not on the plan today, I can't have this. No, they might come onto the plan next year and then leave the plan the following year so that they can qualify. Now that's fine. I don't know that anybody would really go through all that work. But
West Dallas put some limitations on and said you had to be on the city's plan for a year, with the idea that they had a 3-1 open enrollment. And in their case, they didn't want somebody coming on, they're on the plan for 3 months and their spouse's open enrollment happens to be 7-1. Now they get this plan and they're getting all the savings. So they put some requirements.
So somebody signs up for this, is there a requirement they have to be on it for a year, 3 years, 5 years, or is it?
It'd
back and forth?
be an open, just like an open enrollment decision. So you sign up, you're in it for a year, unless you have a qualifying event or those types of things. It still gives you the ability to, so let's say I went on to my spouse's plan, my spouse loses their job, that's a qualifying event to allow them to come back on the county plan.
So funneling it down, like you said,
Yep.
that's getting to my question is what kind of projection can we get in a savings?
yeah, so there's this is in the packet. Now, I gotta couch these projections, right? Because we're making some, of course, we're
Making
using some
assumptions.
actuarial science, making plenty of assumptions. you're gonna get as much savings as however many claims we avoid. So tell me that number, right? But I appreciate your question. Our analysis through this vendor that we use is saying if sort of everybody that they believe would be eligible for the program took advantage of the program, we're talking about $237,000 in savings.
And I don't think it's quite that. They're not assuming all the married spouses take it. I think they're taking a percentage of the married spouses that they think will take the program. But
Yes,
again,
I understand, but
it's,
like you said, if you're really
like I
narrowing it
said-
down to who qualifies, there's 19 that
Yeah.
qualify, I mean, you can get to
Yeah, it-
some ballpark.
yeah, it's more than 19 that
19
qualify.
qualify or 19 you say you think would take it based on?
They're saying it's 19 that they think will take it.
Yeah.
Take it.
Because we've got a lot of people with family coverage. And again, not all of them are married. But again, looking at my scenarios, West Dallas didn't do as much of a high level, let's talk about family savings plan for the next 3 months and make sure everybody gets it. And they've got less participation, but they're still making money off the
But
program.
it really needs to be educated to the employees. for
It
sure,
does.
to
It's
buy in.
important.
Absolutely.
And that's where, if I'm being honest, the recommendation I have right off the top from the list is option 1, which is to move up the deductible slightly. 2 is option 7, which brings down the co-insurance slightly. And then 3 is that we offer the family savings plan.
What's the negative to offer the family savings plan? They don't have to take it.
No, they don't.
Correct. The only negative is that if everyone does it, it's perfect. We're looking at, what was that, 8%?
8.8.
8.8%.
Your budget will bank on that.
But I can't lock that in. In fact, to a certain degree, I'm not sure how much I would want to lock in. Because if no one signs up, there's no savings.
I would assume maybe a third to a half of what they're saying. You might factor in if you think you're comfortable, but agreed with that. I would not assume you're gonna
Especially
get.
first year, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is, if I was an employee hearing this, I'm a skeptical dude. I would be pretty skeptical. This seems too good to be true. You're trying to take advantage of. And so it's
How
gonna
are
take
you
some warming
screwing
up.
me?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm trying to say, but you know, yeah. So
Okay.
year 1, I would definitely temper expectations on savings, but hopefully people that do enroll, find some value in it, talk to their friends here, and they realize that this is actually, it is meant to be a benefit, believe it or not. This is a benefit.
So the key to this is education.
Yeah.
Who's doing the educating? Because do we have the resources?
Oh, I'll do it because everyone will believe me.
No,
Obviously, Horton's gonna be doing some group meetings. We can put some videos together that we can share with people. We'll have people from Network Health Plan come up and have people sign up for individual sessions. Probably pick a couple of days where they can sit down. That's really the most effective. They can also call Family Savings if for some reason the days they're up there, they can't talk to them. They can do FaceTime type things or Teams calls or whatever. I can answer a lot of questions because I've had groups that are in this. So if you want to have people, if they're for whatever reason not able to get a hold of Family Savings Plan, I'm happy to talk to people about it. But ultimately, Family Savings Plan will be doing a lot of the communication in combination with what we put together for the packets, making sure that Peggy understands because she's probably going to get a lot of the questions and she can send them to me or she can send them to Family Savings Plan. We would want this to be as simple of a transition as possible. But if we don't over communicate, for lack of a better term, it's not going to be successful or as successful as it could be.
So the family savings plan would be a company that tracks all of this for us, right? So it's not gonna be another administrative thing that we need to take. I mean, how do they get paid then too?
they get a percentage of savings. It's built into this model. It's a lot. The administration is very sort of behind the scenes. It's what they call a health reimbursement arrangement. So when you go to Kewaunee schools and have your claims and you get an EOB, you submit this explanation of benefits to Family Savings Plan. They recognize who you are. They say, oh, they're part of that program. Then Kewaunee County's account will get swept to grab those reimbursement funds and pay them out to him. But it's mostly behind the scenes. This is not like
Yeah,
all
the
a burden
employees
on-
won't see it so much. You'll see an extra funding source in addition to the health plan, and you'll have some admin invoices come through from them. So it'd be like adding sort of another vendor. Yes, you're
My
gonna bear the
department
brunt of it.
and my payroll and whatever doesn't have to cut checks to the employees.
Your payroll could get impacted a little bit in the premium differential. So you'd pay out that premium differential and it would be taxed.
The premium differential
Yeah.
comes through payroll, but they'll put together like what that is. And then they issue the checks, but you'll approve the check registers.
Got it.
Is there a fixed cost for enrolling in this program to the county?
No.
It's a percentage of savings that they take on the people that enroll.
So they're actually projecting 471,000 in savings to your self-funded plan. But then you reimburse people their premium differences. You reimburse people their out-of-pocket expenses. They take a percentage of savings. There's some administrative fees, not carry the three people making too much money, 237,000. Right?
I just don't want to see Paul all of a sudden pulling his hair out.
Well, and that's,
I got a claim from this and I gotta
Yeah,
pay this.
claims aren't touching the
Yes.
county. You don't want to see those.
The claims would be volume of work that if that's taken care of, fine. The premium, you set it once for the year and you only enroll once a year with the exception of changes.
Should be,
That I'm not as
Monthly.
worried about, but claims reimbursing and anything that comes with it, that would be fine.
Yeah, there's
The
a
biggest
third-party
thing, and
one.
I'm thinking Peggy will send it our way and we'll help with this, is if somebody says, I went in and I didn't get reimbursed for X, Y, Z. She can send them to me so that hopefully she's not bearing that burden, because I know she's already got a lot on her plate. And we can help those members to try and get reimbursed if for some reason they sent in their EOB and they didn't get it on the next check run.
so I'm the employee,
Yep.
I'm sending my things into the family savings plan. And they're tracking a qualified claim, they're tracking my max out of pocket, my co-pays, all that stuff.
Yeah.
They're basically taking the information off the EOBs that come in and they're reimbursing you based on that. So if
So it's verified that our burden or not our burden, but our obligation to that employee's max out of pocket has been satisfied, and then we no longer obligated for the
My
year.
question, how is this company making any money in this deal? What is-
Because they're
again, they're
taking
taking
half
a
the
percentage of
savings.
the savings.
It's like.
The other thing
25
you
or
have to think
30%.
about, Network Health Plan is a provider-owned provider system.
Okay. Let's
Sorry.
assume I had I incurred $2,000 out of pocket,
Mhm.
and they're gonna come in and pay this, so I'm in a hole. How
We're
does
paying the
family service-
2,000.
We're paying the 2,000.
Right, this family plan is paying the 2,000 to make me whole, because I went over to the school district, right? How are they profiting off that 2,000?
They don't pay the 2,000. Kewaunee County pays the 2,000. They get a percentage as an ad.
your 2,000 of out of pocket was actually worth of $15,000 worth of claims.
Right?
So I paid the 2,000, I don't have to pay the
I
15.
get that.
Okay,
So
so
that's $13,000 worth of savings.
Direct
Take a third
path.
of that, they get 4.
Direct path is the same way. Instead of spending 10,000 on procedures, you go someplace that costs 6. You get a percentage of savings, county saves.
I get all that.
So that's,
So
No, you're asking a good question.
my
still gonna be
2,000,
paying
right, the actual dollars that went to play me is $2,000. What does county have to pay in that results in me getting 2,000? Did they pay 3,000 in? That gets 2,000 me, 1,000 families, whatever it is?
They're looking at your funding rates like they would a fully insured premium rate. So let's say your funding rates generated $20,000 a year. If you only paid out 2,000 to that member, the difference is 18,000.
Yes.
They're taking a percentage of that. And I don't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but let's say they're taking 5% of that 18,000 of savings.
Is that a
That's-
check we write to them?
It's,
Check the county writes to them?
I believe that's part of the administrative fees.
So
So
we'll
as,
have a monthly administrative fee or something to this?
yes,
company?
and it'll vary based on what the claims are.
Well, we won't know because it's gonna be based on.
Well, they still produce this and they say,
That's right. It's gonna be based on how many people leave your plan. So, it's a good question. It's for every person that leaves your plan, to Kelly's premium equivalent standpoint, your family premium annualized is $25,000. Your single premium annualized is, thank you,
8,500.
yeah. So for every family that leaves the plan, they're believing they save you $24,000. And they must make some assumptions of that 24,000
So even if I
But
don't
you're-
claim $1, you're still gonna have to pay a fee for that person leaving?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yes and no, I had this discussion, right?
But
Since
we will
I gotta get back to you on that.
not be paying something
We
else.
wouldn't be paying the same.
It's gotta be real savings,
Nothing
not
for nothing,
presumed
it's a fee.
savings.
Which we did with direct path and which they.
Yeah.
I guess I think of it this, but I think of it similar to direct path. In that, here's a bunch of money that we're not having to pay. We're giving some back to the employee. And from that savings, also, there's a percentage of savings that direct path takes off the top. We save, employee saves, direct path gets their.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's no way the county's not gonna save money on an employee going through family plan, right?
I
In
would
my-
find it incredibly hard. Well, can't say never.
That's true, but I think you need to know what the cost is.
Yeah,
I can get that to you. We've got to, I just don't remember the percentage off the top of my head. I usually dig into the employee portion, but the other part, because you're asking, what are they getting out of it? They're a provider-owned system. They want people to go to their providers because their health system will make more money. I mentioned before, 87.4% of our members are going to their providers already. They want to influence those people that are going off your plan to change and go to their providers so that they're getting more provider share. So those people that, I can't do the math, but 100 minus 87 point,
Call it
whatever.
13.
13% of the people, they want that 13% of the people to become, have their primary care physicians be part of that network health plan.
network health plan's owned by Ascension and Freighters. They want more butts in their bed. It's just market share. I have to get back to you on that. That is an important question. And I
There's
know
an
I've asked it.
exhibit that I can imagine, I just can't explain it very well, that actually will tell you how that's calculated.
But it's so futuristic because you're right. If people leave your plan and don't incur any claim expenses.
Then why did you ever get off?
Right, but then how also are they making any money? But that's how we.
I think for me, if we can have a little more in-depth conversation at our next meeting on this, because it's very interesting to me and probably all of us, but there are obviously questions and
Yeah.
concerns on true savings, true expense, and whatever it's gonna mean to the finance department.
Right.
Well, the other question is, will the right people leave the plan?
That's an unknown, right? And a good question, yeah. And that comes with education.
But again, in theory, you should have more people leave that are high utilizers of claims because they're gonna get the most benefit.
Yeah, because if the low utilizer leaves, they aren't really gaining it.
They're getting their premium differential and that's really it. And if they're in the Kewaunee County plan right now, they're probably in it for a reason. It's not gonna be that much of a difference if they move someplace else to save $30 a month or whatever it is. So we've not seen that. The return on investment has been real. Like I said, it's easier to quantify on a fully insured basis, but they're definitely saving money with both my groups that have this. And we're getting more and more that are interested in it.
Yeah, lots of groups interested because they all have the same questions and entrepreneurial spirit that you all do. The hardest part in our world, in addition to the expense, is how do you predict what claims you're going to avoid? It's just like a wellness program. Wellness is great. You stopped a stroke. How do you know? How do we know that we avoid claim activity that would be on our self-funded plan in 2022 because they left? You can't predict it. We can know it after the year based on looking at the reimbursements and explanation of benefits that were submitted, but we can't know it now. And that's a little bit of the gambling.
Here's one just an assumption. If we go into the budget, assuming everybody, we have budgeted enough money to cover everybody who's currently in the plan.
Mhm,
For every person who takes advantage of this and
Mhm.
makes no claims at all,
mhm.
we have lower costs on what we budgeted for the insurance plan, and that savings will more than cover the administrative fee for that person leaving,
That would be.
even if they make no claims at all.
I don't think we know that. I think that's what they gotta.
That would be the
get
hope,
at.
But
but
it's
you can't
not
guarantee
100% of the savings. though.
But if we
Right.
look at what the admin premium are and the stop loss premium, I don't have those in front of me today, but we can figure out what the cost is for an individual for the admin and the stop loss. And as long as whatever you're paying out is less than that, even if the person didn't have any claims, you're still saving money. But we can get that figure to you and we can get you some more information on what they quantify as savings and exactly the percentage that they're taking.
Well, provided it's less than 100%.
I'm thinking, I believe it's 30 or less, but I just don't remember the percentage off the top of my head.
I think it's 30 plus or minus 5.
30%.
Yeah.
Feels bad,
But
but
again, your ROI, it's kind of like direct path.
While
It sounds like a large percentage, but at the end of the day, as long as your ROI is more than what they took in a savings percentage, you're still better off.
I think of it this way, because it reminds me of the treasurer's office. You have these air finders. I found you your money, but I want 15%.
And oh, by
Well,
the way,
you had
use my
zero.
network where I set the rate.
So now you're getting 85 cents on the dollar, where before you had nothing, and now you're gonna complain? Then stay with nothing.
I think the plan is sound. I think you need to explore this a little bit more.
Then, Mr. Chair and committee, what I will do is I will work with Kelly and Dan to find another meeting still here in September. I am going to assume we love to see your lovely faces. So it would be another in person. It would be solely for insurance. So that way, by October 5, or whatever that first Friday is in October, that there is it October 1? Okay, it's October 1, is then at October 1, I won't say there are no questions left, but the vast majority of all questions have been answered and a decision can be made. Is that fair?
So we're having a special meeting in September yet?
That's insurance only.
Okay,
What Jeff had proposed, we just
we'll just do it in our October meeting.
Do the October meeting.
Are you going to be able to make a decision?
We have to.
I think so. Personally, I can say I believe I would be.
Okay,
It's another
that-
2-hour meeting that just focuses, I think it's gonna focus
then
only on the family plan.
then I'm
We're
okay.
sequestered
It'll
until
be
we're done.
fine-tuning.
Then I'm
I gotta
okay.
eat lunch, so I like to eat, so.
I'll bring you food. I just need to make sure that by October 1, the committee has made a decision.
Are you guys comfortable with that?
If we're willing to meet for a couple hours and talk just the family plan, I think we're gonna get all this stuff moved out. Because I don't have any more questions.
As well
about
as the
other
plan
ones.
plan.
I don't have any other questions about that one.
Okay.
It's pretty straightforward what our options are there. It's just, we gotta vote on it.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
know the stop loss renewal at that point, and we'll maybe have another month of claims, but
Again,
Yeah.
I just want to be sure for two main reasons. One is budgetary, the other is the administrative. Because both are very critical. Administration is just as critical as the budget. Because we have to get the information ready, put together, and be able to get it out to the employees. And if that's the case, and we approve a family savings plan, then what we have to do is we have to start then coordinating to try to do employee meetings and one-on-one meetings as well. So that's why, I'm kind of putting my foot down here that if we're only doing it on October 1st, then a decision must be made on October 1st.
I foresee such a fabulous presentation. There's not going to be any
I
doubt
like
on
your
what we need to do.
optimism, Supervisor Bolenweider. I am so.
pressure.
So we are gonna get far more clarity on the cost and how Kewaunee County is gonna pay those out.
Yes.
For different situations.
We could even invite a family savings plan rep to be here. Yes, we will have much
Yeah.
more clarity around the finer details of that program.
Because to me, it comes down to, is there a way we can actually lose money on it?
And
If there is, then I wouldn't be interested in it, but if there, it seems like a,
I assume that there's always some way to lose money, but what's the likelihood? If 99 times out of 100 you win money, well, there's still that 1% chance you can lose.
All the people leave who are low utilizers and they don't have any claims and I'm sure there's a way.
Yeah, and then.
The likelihood is probably so small that it's
Right.
not realistic.
Right.
but
But
for
I'd
that,
like to see that.
for the calendar year, are we setting, I guess that's the other question I have, are we setting the insurance rate before we know how many people leave the plan, or will that get?
Yes.
Yes. We
So
don't,
we will, for next year, at least, that would already be in place.
yeah.
Yes, because you have to have a premium.
But there's just certain dominoes have to fall leading up to January 1st. And this one, the family savings plan, again, is just a little bit of a squidgy sort of hopeful benefit to the county's budget, but one that we won't know if it came to fruition until,
I mean, we're not going to budget
Right.
based on the family
That's right.
savings plan.
that's right.
That's what I was thinking.
You could
No.
budget based on a percentage of it if you wanted to. The conservative way would be to not, and then you build up your reserve.
Right, so we figure out our percentages like we talked about in the beginning of the meeting.
Correct.
And if we decide we want to go with the family savings plan,
That's
See
icing
where we
on the
end up.
cake.
I hope that that's us.
That's how I would do it. No different than
And then,
we do direct path.
and then this time
It's
next
icing on
year
the
is a
cake.
much easier discussion.
Correct.
Is it a year-to-year contract with them?
Yeah, it might actually, it might be 3.
It's 2 or 3 year.
Do they keep charging for the savings the following year for somebody who was already moved out of the plan?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, it's what do you mean?
Well,
So if you move somebody this year,
Like, do they get the compounding effect?
They
of-
do,
Then it's a
because you're
savings this year.
saving on their claims every year. So they would take a percentage of the savings again
Okay.
based on the utilization.
Assuming they had those things.
because that'll continue for the county just as it does for them.
And I'm going to assume and press upon Kelly and Dan that we have a family savings plan person come. So that way, some of these technical ones, they hopefully should be able to answer.
Dan Mechanic's the guy's name. Used to be Tom Hitchcock. Yes, no problem.
We have the infrastructure for it now. Next week.
All righty, Mr. Chair?
So then, just so I understand, on October 1st at our next meeting, we're gonna have our regular agenda plus full decision on health insurance.
or really short agenda.
Or maybe we get to go first.
There we go. Let's have health-
Good luck with that.
Let's have the health insurance go first. And I'm going to assume pretty much anything else that would be on an October agenda. We don't have to worry about if it does, then we can do it as a finance committee meeting prior to the county board meeting in October. Is that fair? Awesome.
When do we get our budget books?
When I say. No, I'm kidding.
County board,
We
September.
usually send it county board in September.
Oh, we're gonna get them this week.
I'm figuring it for 3 hours that day.
So,
I hope
So
so.
this was two.
yes,
This was two.
yeah, well, but at least the first 40 minutes was other stuff. So October 1st will be our next meeting at 8 o'clock. If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I'm gonna say we adjourned at 10, so it's a full 2 hours and not a minute more.
That's fine.
I'm
But
now,
we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Jeff, seconded by Tom. All those in favor, signify.
just so you know, I just screwed all of you out of $10.
Thanks a lot.
I'll figure it out.
You're thinking about that?
Why?
I got
Because if it's
10:01.
only 8 to 10,
No.
I got
it's
10 on
gotta be a
Cellcom.
it's only 10.
It's only 10.
You don't get a $10 for an extra minute.
Yeah, you do, because it's into the next half
We
hour.
have to be here till 10:30.
We have to
Past
be here till
10:30.
10:30.
Yes.
But what do you guys want to talk about?
Yeah.
I'm getting short at all this. I can make a claim.
No, that was the way it was explained to me, yeah.
Yeah.
You're used to all that big money at the city.
Oh, the city.
Because there was
Yeah.
people who were at
We make good money there.
9:59 who would keep talking until after 10.
Some poverty wages over there. Are you kidding?
The city of Kewaunee is the whole municipality.